Hey everybody, it's Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com. So one of the mail order services we offer to our customers is, say you just lost all your keys to your scooter. Well, the original practice is to replace this complete ECU. Typically these are about $800. This is the computer that is a combination of a throttle body, some sensors, and electronics that control the scooter and the fuel injection system. It's pretty much found on a Vespa GTS, a BB 300 and later. So any Vespa GTS, whether it's a 250, a 300, anything that's fuel injected. The carbureted ones, they also use the Immobilizer keys. So Immobilizer keys, they do have a chip in them. And if you change the lock set, not going to start the scooter because they're specifically matched and coded to these electronic boxes, whether it's a CDI box, which would be your electronic ignition control for a carbureted scooter, or if you have the fuel injected modern stuff such as the GTS 300s, BB 350, MP3 250, 400, 500, they all use the same style, similar system. So you do this in combination with replacing your column lock. So I have a link in the description along with an extra video you can click for how to change a column lock on a modern Vespa, and also how to program the keys to your Vespa, hypothetically if you're putting a brand new ECU in there, because these ECUs, they commonly refer to them as they're in their virgin state when they're brand new, so they're unprogrammed to any sort of key. They're not attached to any type of key. But if you're looking to do the service where we would code a brand new original Piaggio lock set to this, you'd need to take this out. So let's get right to it. You're going to need to get underneath the seat. Typically you pop the glove box. There's a manual release if the electronic actuator is not working on a GTS. One thing to keep in mind if you're doing this on a Primavera or Sprint, the ECU for the fuel injection is actually located under a glove box, and you can find other videos that I have on how to remove the glove box on a Primavera or Sprint. Typically you need to remove the glove box if you're doing a lock service anyways, changing out the lock, which I cover in changing the column lock. A couple tools we'll need: a flat or Phillips screwdriver for both the hose clamp for the intake manifold and the air boot to the air box, a T25 Torex driver, and either a 12 or 13 millimeter wrench to disconnect your speedometer cables. And keep in mind, these are very specific to the model years. For instance, they have one that's specific for 2018 and 19 only, one that's 2015 through 2017, 2020 is a unique ECU, the 300s from 2010 all the way to 2014 are one style, and then the 250s all use the same. So even though these body styles and the engines look similar, these are different between the different model years. So first of all, disconnect your battery from the scooter would be a good idea. T25 driver, remove the single Torex that retains both the fuel line and the strap for the main connector on this throttle body here. Next, you may need to use a stubby. Go ahead and loosen the clamps, and don't just loosen them a little bit, you can do it quite a bit. The cool thing with this one is it has the tab folds over and you're able to slacken up very quickly. This one, it's usually easiest done with a flat bladed screwdriver, and it does not have that trick feature where it will flop open. So again, take it out several turns. Next, we'll lift the fuel line carefully. You don't want to break your fuel injector. This rubber boot protects the main connection underneath. I would recommend pulling it back, and there's a tab right under here. Push the tab until it makes a little snap, and then carefully pull the connector right away from the throttle body. Have your flat bladed screwdriver handy. Go ahead and lift the throttle body away from the intake manifold at a 45-degree angle. Pull it out. Sometimes it'll pull right out of each of the boots. If you're doing this on an older scooter, these rubber boots may be hardened. I'd recommend heating them up with hot water, a hair dryer. Don't want to use a torch in here. And next, we're going to take our 12mm wrench. Go ahead and loosen both the inners. Then go ahead and back this all the way off. And that's the lock nut from the outside, or the lock nut from the inside on the top cable, which is your black cable here. Some early models only have a single throttle cable. And see, you have to have enough slack to loosen the cable. So see how that one's all the way slackened up? And go ahead and pull the cable through the clamp, just like that. And I warn you, do not touch this set screw here, or don't take any of this apart. I've had people send me throttle bodies. All this is dismantled and taken apart. It's not how you do it. So again, two options. You can replace this whole entire ECU, or you can send it to Vespa Motorsport, Scooter West. You can look at our mail order services on scooterwest.com for the cost to do these key services, which is all inclusive, includes the lock set, pair or even 3 keys. And once you get this back ends coated, you can put it back in, or maybe you're just replacing because you need to put a new one because there's a fault with it. You'd need to program the keys and all that. MP3s are more difficult if you change this out because there is a pairing process to the tilt lock controller, which all communicates through a CAN bus. So pretty much just put it back together in the reverse order that I did, and that pretty much sums up how you remove and reinstall the ECU, which is an integrated unit on these Vespa fuel-injected scooters. So the tricky part is getting these throttle cables all situated correctly when you're reassembling. The rest of it's pretty straightforward. It goes into the rubber boots. Make sure the rubber boots don't fold over, so you have a proper air seal, no intake leaks. But kind of want to test your throttle cables. There's definitely more slack than we need there. So there's your pull cable on the lower part, and then your push cable, which the adjustment's not nearly as critical. So kind of get them close. And FY, they are like kind of a D shape, so they're keyed when they go into the hole. And see how there's a little bit of free play, and that's coming all the way to the stop. That's the correct tension. So you want that cable to move just ever so slightly. Always want to have free play in there, because when the temperature changes, it could bind up the cables, and you make the throttle stick, which is something you don't want to do. And the idea of this push cable is, if for some reason the throttle is stuck, you can roll the throttle back and close your throttle. And typically I'll get it into this larger boot here. Again, if you're having difficulty, I would recommend heating these parts up, or maybe they're in bad shape, it's just time to replace them. Very critical that they don't fold over and they go in perfectly square and all the way seated. All the time I see people do-it-yourselfs that they put these things in and the boot looks like that, and that they think that's acceptable. It needs to be all the way on the barbs. And don't be afraid to get your flat-bladed screwdriver under there. Not going to damage anything, but you can help kind of coax the rubber boot back onto this intake. And there's a little tooth that lines up with a slot on there. Same with on the front, there's a tooth right there. And just go ahead and tighten the hose clamps. You don't need to get too wild with how tight they are. And last, we'll get the clamp back into place. Thread that through. And the idea here is you just want these screws, these clamps, easy to access with a screwdriver. If they're on the bottom of the boot, it's going to be hard to tighten these screws here. And listen for the click. Needs to make an audible click, indicating that connector's all the way seated. And the Torx screw, and that's pretty much it. Reconnect your battery. And you should be good to go. One thing is these do have some self-learning that they need to do when they first start up. So you may have an erratic idle or a couple stalls when they're cold until they fully warm up, and then they'll self-learn the characteristics of the scooter. So there you go. There's how you change out, remove and replace the ECU, or the throttle body, or the MIU, as they call it, Magnesium Morelli Integrated Unit, I think is what the acronym is for. Definitely need to do that if you're changing out the keys. You can either replace it with a new one or send it to Scooter West, and we can certainly code it for you. Thanks again for watching. It's Robot here for Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com. Until next time.